us begin with a question.
Well, kia ora, and now my haramai father to the Curiously Catholic podcast, the Evangelion Apostolate. How you doing?
Good. It's nice to be with you, and excited to be coming to New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah, it's quite a distance from you. Whereabouts are you located at the moment?
We're in Massachusetts on the east coast of the United States, so north of New York, kind of a populated part of the U.S., and we're excited to be able to start this year spreading more mercy around the world. And I've always had a love for Australia. I was there not too long ago, and so I'm excited to come back because we're doing the world release of my new book about the sacraments called Understanding the Sacraments. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're quite prolific in your output. You've got books, you've got podcasts, you've got videos. You're just absolutely everywhere. Like that's
Television
like
show on EWTN. So praise be to God. Plus the printed word. We do a lot out of our print, periodicals and magazines and whatnot, where we get the message of mercy out too.
Yeah. So before we get too lost in all that, you are coming to New Zealand and Australia, as you mentioned, 23rd and 4th of May. You're going to be doing a conference for us in Rosmini College, and you're going to be starting out at the Auckland Cathedral, St. Patrick's.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you'll be heading down to Christchurch after that. So you've been to New Zealand before,
in fact,
though, right?
On the Friday, which is May 23rd, I'll be at St. Patrick's, as you mentioned, in Auckland. And I'll be doing a talk at 7 p.m. So if you're in the area, please come by. And then I'll stay in Auckland for Saturday, the 24th and Sunday, the 25th, where I'll be at the Auditorium Rosemini College in Takapuna. And I'll be there from 8 to 5. So that one's all day. And then the Christchurch visit will be on Tuesday, May 27th at St. Bede's College, and that is in Christchurch, and that'll be 7 o'clock at night as well. Then the next day, heading to Australia, where I'll
Thank
be
goodness.
Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne.
That's pretty full on, man. How do you manage all the travel? Is it difficult with everything you're doing?
It is. I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse, but I don't really sleep. And I have many people getting angry with me. I mean, even if I don't go to bed till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, I get up at 5:30, no matter what time I go to bed. And so even if I don't get to bed till 2 or 3, I'm up at 5:30. So I've always been able to function. Several nights I haven't slept at all, but I can fully function on just an hour or two a night, unfortunately, many times. Again, I'm not encouraging this, or nor am I supporting this, but I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but it does help that I don't require a lot of sleep to be able to keep this schedule.
Well, I think it's interesting. I feel like when God gives you a calling or a mission, He provides what you need in order to power through. I've definitely experienced that entering into parenthood. As a single person, you get tired and you think, that's it, I need to sleep. As a parent, you get tired and that's your baseline, and then you just keep getting more tired until hopefully they get old enough to stop waking up in the night. But yeah, it's cool how God provides in that way. And how long have you been doing this for?
I've been ordained for about 11 years, but I was assisting our provincial superior back in the early days. So I came to the Marian Fathers in 2006. And the reason I came here was at the time for Divine Mercy, but now I realize it's a lot to do with the Immaculate Conception. That message is so important. And so the Marian Fathers bring the two together, Divine Mercy and Mary, like no other community in the world. And so even though I really didn't know what I was doing, it's very clear now that God's hand was in it, leading me on this path. So I'm forever grateful that God's been so patient with me. And, here I teach and preach on Divine Mercy, but I definitely am the one in most need of His mercy. I come from a secular world. I was engaged to be married. I had a business, a lot of money, girlfriends, and it just didn't ever appealed to me to become a priest. If somebody would have told me in high school or college that I was going to be a priest, I would have cried. In fact, my mom did cry when I did announce that I was entering into the religious life. Not out of joy either. My mom cried tears of sorrow, and but now I never look back. I'm part of a great community. We get great support from our general offices in Rome, and I'm very grateful to serve in this role as the provincial superior. I didn't expect it, and I didn't seek it, that's for sure. But we just do what we feel God is asking.
Mm. Yeah, I want to dive more into divine mercy. You've touched on a lot of things there, and I know you're really busy, so I don't want to get too caught up in some
No,
amazing
no
stories. We'll have
problem.
to organize another podcast when you're less busy, and we can go into your conversion story. But
Yeah,
you mentioned Divine Mercy, you mentioned the Immaculate Heart, and obviously you're coming for the Divine Mercy conference, and there's going to be an emphasis on evangelism, and from what's been told on the posters and stuff, and I'm really interested in getting into that. Like first off, like we have all these different devotions. You've mentioned two of them, and I feel like in Catholic circles, or Christian circles anyway, devotions almost have I don't know, kind of tribalism to them. Yeah, your Divine Mercy, I'm Immaculate Heart. You can't have both at the same time, but obviously you can. And so I was wondering, could you just dive into a little bit, like what is a devotion? What is devotional? What are these
yeah.
specific things?
Now, first of all, it's important to say at the offset that Divine Mercy is not just a devotion. In fact, um, it's both a message and a devotion. And there's only really two unique things that fit under that. That's the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Divine Mercy. This is not a devotion to another saint. This is about the message of divine mercy, which goes back to the Garden of Adam and Eve. Pope Benedict said that divine mercy is the nucleus of the gospel. He said that it's not a secondary Christian devotion, but an integral part of Christian life and prayer. And so, what we have to understand is that the message of divine mercy goes all the way back to God having mercy on mankind after the sin in the garden. And his mercy is the beginning, as it is present at the beginning of all the mess we got into with Adam and Eve. But what people don't understand is they just think of divine mercy as a devotion. It's not. It's the nucleus of the gospel. We think of it as the ABCs. A is ask for God's mercy. B is be merciful to each other, and C is completely trust in God's mercy. All three of those are mandatory to get to heaven. If you're missing any one of the three, you cannot get to heaven. You need all three. The Bible says if you do not repent and ask for forgiveness of your sins and God's mercy, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. B is be merciful to each other. Matthew 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats, talks about if you're not merciful to the others, you'll be thrown literally into the fire, into the eternal fire. Um, he uses when I was hungry, you gave me no food, thirsty, no drink, naked, no clothing, in the prison, you didn't visit me. But when to those who did do those things, he says, welcome them into the kingdom of your Father. And then trust is very interesting because the whole message of the Diary of St. Faustina and the Bible is about trust. People don't realize the whole Bible is built on trust. The Bible is a love letter that God has given to his wayward bride, which was Israel, now the church, the new Israel. And God is constantly seeking to woo back his bride. And we're skittish, we're fearful, we're skeptical, and we haven't responded. So, over the centuries, as God's tried to call us in as his wayward bride, he finally rose up a great saint, Saint Faustina. He told her that divine mercy is mankind's last hope of salvation. And he gave her 5 new channels of grace that we refer to. Yes, you are correct. The devotion of divine mercy. And that you can remember with the little acronym F.I.N.C.H, like the little bird, F.I.N.C.H. F is the feast, of divine mercy. I is the image of divine mercy. N is the novena of divine mercy. C is the chaplet of divine mercy. And H is the hour of divine mercy, 3 p.m. Now, yes, devotions in the church are technically optional, but this is not a devotion to just another saint like the toenail of Saint Therese. Okay. This is a devotion directly to God, and that's not optional. We must be devoted to God. And in every image of divine mercy, his left foot is stepping forward. He's coming to us. So this is also about God's devotion to us. It's very unique, unlike any other in the church. It's fully approved. John Paul instituted the Feast of Divine Mercy in 2000, canonized St. Faustina. And he said that the reason he believed he was made Pope, he told this to our priests and brothers in a private audience. He said, the reason I believe I was made Pope was to canonize St. Faustina and to institute the Feast of Divine Mercy. And I'll finish with one last thing that to tell you it's not optional. In the Missal, where it says regarding Divine Mercy Sunday, the second Sunday of Easter or Divine Mercy Sunday, it makes it sound optional, but actually that's a mistranslation. The word seau in the Latin really is translated namely, or you could say it's translated that is. So really, the missal should say the second Sunday of Easter, namely Divine Mercy Sunday, or the second Sunday of Easter, that is Divine Mercy Sunday. And so it was the intent that this be celebrated throughout the universal church. So quite different than any of our other devotions.
Yeah, because I was talking to Pat Barrett, who's the guy organizing the conference. We did a
Yes.
podcast with him a couple of weeks ago, and that was definitely the attitude that came across of because, like, I suppose up until these interviews, I've always engaged with the Divine Mercy devotion in the sense that I do the 3 o'clock prayer and such like that. But I've kind of had that perspective that you mentioned that like this is another devotion. But as you were talking just then, and after talking to Pat, it seems that, and it makes sense when you think about it for 20 seconds. It's like the devotion's called Divine Mercy, regardless of whether there is a particular prayer or a particular day or all the things you mentioned in Finch. His mercy exists, and it was poured out for us, and it is there. And as you were mentioning how it's not an optional thing, and because one of the kind of negative things I've heard people say about Divine Mercy is like, oh, it's taking away the second Sunday of Easter. And as you described it then, it's like, no, the second Sunday of Easter is this thing, and it's kind of been revealed to us, like, that it existed anyway. Just like, if you measure measure water, you'll see there's, 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen, H2O, yeah, to get it right. It's like, that's real, whether or not you measure it. And Jesus' divine mercy is waiting for us there. And because like there is this kind of attitude that, oh, this was added on in the 1930s with Saint Faustina, and we need to look at it more as a revelation rather than a devotion, eh?
Very good observation. Very good. Because what people don't really understand is the fact that, for instance, you mentioned how it replaces. I hear a lot of complaints that it replaces the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and it doesn't. Divine mercy completes and fulfills the Sacred Heart. You see, in the Sacred Heart, because of Jansenism, the heresy of Jansenism, God told St. Margaret Mary Alacoque to tell the world, I am love. Come to me. I am love. And make reparation to my Sacred Heart. And still mankind didn't do it. So in Divine Mercy, it's still, if you can see the image behind me, the rays of red and white are coming from the heart, the Sacred Heart. This is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And what's important is in Divine Mercy, it's about that same love, but that love put into action. That is the definition of mercy. It's a particular mode of love that when love encounters suffering, it takes action to do something about it. I can tell you all day long, I love you. But until you see me actually prove it and put it into action, you never really know. So Jesus teaching the world about the Sacred Heart, I am love, come to me. Mankind still didn't really respond. So then he raises up another great saint, Saint Faustina, tells the word about divine mercy. And that's why the left foot of every image is stepping towards us. He's coming towards us. And you mentioned the octave, or I said the second Sunday of Easter. The reason why Jesus said it had to be on that day is because it completes an octave. An octave is a tradition that comes from the Jews that when a feast was so big, it could not be celebrated in one day. They would celebrate it over 8 days. All 8 days of the Easter octave are celebrated as one day. So guess what? You can't separate Easter Sunday from Divine Mercy Sunday. They're the bookends of the 8 day octave. And here's what's fascinating. On day one of the octave, which is Easter Sunday, we know Jesus opened the door to heaven. Now, the perfect number to the Jews is 7, but that is regards to time or creation. So the next 7 days are symbolic of our pilgrimage on earth called life. It's kind of like the Jews being in the desert. But the number 8 to the Jews represents eternity. So on the 8th day, we will enter into eternity. And guess what? The Bible calls Christ the bridegroom. The bride is Israel, the new church. Who's the church? We are. The church, the new Israel. Who is the church? We are. And so when we enter into eternity, Christ wants to find us spotless. The problem is most of us aren't. We have either sin or temporal punishment resulting from sin due on our souls. And so God wants to take us to the real wedding feast of the Lamb, described in the Bible, the wedding feast of the Lamb. This is what heaven is. But if we're not ready, then he's going to be a sad groom because he wants to take us on that 8th day to meet his mother and his father, like any Jewish man wanted his bride to be pure, spotless. And so we have to be pure and spotless. But if we have any sin or the stain of sin through the temporal punishment, we're not ready. So Jesus makes something called an extraordinary promise. On this day, he said, the floodgates of my mercy are open. On this one day, he says, the soul that has been to confession, so now you wipe out sin, and receives Holy Communion. And now that is the race here, Holy Communion, the blood, the precious blood. He says the soul that's been in confession and receives Holy Communion will receive the complete forgiveness of not only all sin, but all punishment. This is number 699 in the diary. What makes this so powerful is it makes us spotless. We will be spotless so that when Christ comes for us, when we enter into eternity, his bride is going to be pure and immaculate, going to be spotless. So that's why this day is so important. It wipes everything clean. From this day backwards, your whole life, people say, gee, I wish I could start over. I wish I could get a clean slate. Now is your opportunity. So don't miss this day. April 27th, the Sunday after Easter. Get to confession between now and then. Receive Holy Communion and ask God for the grace that you've been to confession, you've been to communion, give you the grace of complete forgiveness of not only all sin, but all punishment. And you are spotless. It's like a second baptism. Although we don't get baptized twice, it's like our soul is cleansed in baptism. It's that incredible.
Mm. Yeah, one thing I spoke to Pat about in the last episode was how the church is very good in the sense that it's defined things that we can know, which will lead us into a deep relationship with Christ and stuff. Like we've got the tangibleness of the Eucharist, we've got the doctrines and dogmas and the liturgies, and sometimes we get lost in that. And I can see people tripping up on this, like, no, you can't get baptized twice, but that's not what's being said. But it's just an
No,
analogy.
it's like a second baptism that's emphasized because in baptism you're wiped away clean of all sin and punishment due to
Mm.
sin. Like if you're baptized as an adult, we are not baptized twice, But if we go to Divine Mercy Sunday, it's like a second baptism because we are also wiped clear of not only all the sin, but all the punishment due to sin.
Yeah. Um, so uh, the other thing is like again, it's that perspective change of looking at Divine Mercy not as a devotion, not as one of those five points meant in
Channels,
the channels,
channels of
but
grace.
having the perspective change, which like Christ is entering into our existence. Um, the 8 days is one day. This is a pilgrimage. This is a journey, and one of the things that I think is a difficulty in spreading the message of divine mercy, but also just evangelism generally to those that may be a bit more indifferent or those that may be, you know, against the faith, is how do we reveal to them the spiritual realities that have been revealed to us? Because they do sound a little bit crazy when you start trying to explain. It sounds like up is down and down is up. When you talk about God
No,
entering into the world.
unless you are radical and you don't believe in the authority of the church, you shouldn't have an issue with this because all of this is fully approved by the authority of the church. Saint Faustina, contrary to some of the radicals saying that she's a heretic, she could not have been canonized by the church, as Saint Faustina was heretical. In fact, the reason she was canonized is because the depth of the theology and the deepness of the spirituality of her writings, coming from a girl with only 3 years of formal education, had to be supernatural because she had no training or education in the areas that she was writing. The only reason there was a ban, and it wasn't a ban, it was a temporary halt on her writings in 1959 to 1978, was simply because there was a faulty translation of a nun from the Polish into the Italian, and she did not understand the language or Faustina's words because Faustina didn't write with punctuation. She was very almost illiterate. And once the translations were cleaned up, Paul VI, not John Paul II, freely gave St. Faustina and her writings to be embraced by the church. And then in 2000, when she was canonized and the Feast of Mercy was instituted, that means the church has embraced all of these writings and all of these promises. You can't be a follower of the church and say, that this is the church doesn't have the authority to do this. Yes, she does, and the church has declared authoritatively that Faustina's writings were genuine and supernatural, or she could not have been canonized. And so we have to realize that this extraordinary promise comes through the approval of the authority of the church. Not this is not some fringe, crazy um, devotion. This is a message that's the heart of the gospel, and so we have to realize that.
Mm. No, yeah, and like getting ourselves to the point where we're able to receive that is like I feel like such a mammoth task. And
Mhm.
I want to get into like the practices of devotion and how they actually act on us. So yeah, getting ourselves to that point where we're able to receive it, this amazing grace, the reality of the spirituality, the reality of the supernatural in our lives. Um, because we talk about, especially the way the five the Finch. I'm going to call it Finch from now on.
Yep,
Of
that's fine.
divine mercy is presented. It seems like it's a bit of a magic bullet. Here, do these five things, get grace. But it's and that's I suppose the skeptic would say, oh, that's just like a box ticking exercise. But is it a magic bullet or is it like a process of
Yeah.
transformation?
You
And what does that
you
do to
could
the person?
you can say the same thing about the sacraments. Are the sacraments a magic bullet that I automatically get grace? Well, the sacrament is guaranteed grace. They're not symbolic. They're not symbols. Remember our definition of a sacrament. an efficacious, meaning it does something, an efficacious sign of God's grace instituted by Christ, entrusted to the church by which divine life is instilled in us. Now, I'm not reading that I just know that from the heart because that was the biggest thing I teach my kids in catechism is you got to know what the sacrament, it's guaranteed grace. It's what separates us from any other church of the 45,000 Christians. Of course, the Orthodox, have valid sacraments, but they're not in the line of the papacy. So only the Catholic Church has the fullness of the truth. But it is, in a way, extra grace. It's an extra credit of grace because Jesus promises many things through saying of the chaplet, through, the grace of Divine Mercy Sunday. Really, all he's doing, I'll tell you why it's not a magic bullet. All God is doing in the promise of Divine Mercy Sunday is to get you back to the sacraments. Go to
Mm.
confession, receive Holy Communion. Now, if you want to call those magic bullets, that's great because they really are in one way. Um, but there's nothing magic about them. It's God's willing it. And so all Divine Mercy Sunday is not some kind of magic. Is just simply the Lord saying, I want you to go back to the sacraments. But people have become so immune and the world needs this that God in his infinite wisdom decided to sweeten the pot and say, you know what? Not only I want you to go back to the sacraments, but not enough people are responding. So I'm going to sweeten this by giving, he knows mankind, he knows our weakness, by giving mankind something that they can tangibly grasp. And grace is that something. And so the extraordinary promise is, he gives us something. Not only are sins forgiven, such as in the confessional, but all the temporal punishment due to sin. I mean, yeah, Father, that's just a plenary indulgence. Yes, the church has the authority to grant a plenary indulgence, but don't forget, one of the conditions in a plenary indulgence is no attachment to sin, even venial. Now, good luck. As remember, it was revealed to St. Philip Neri that 1,200 people were in the cathedral doing the plenary indulgence, and God revealed to him only two people got the plenary indulgence or something like that. My point is this: when God gives us the same grace as the forgiveness of sins and the remission of the temporal punishment due to sin, it's not without our part. You can't continue to have an affair on your wife, embezzle money from your company, and cheat on your taxes and have no love for your neighbor and expect that you can just go get this and it's going to make you completely holy and immaculate. Okay. It doesn't work that way. It's not a magic wand. It's not a rabbit's foot. What this is if we go back to the sacraments with a contrite heart and we have rectification of the will. This is the key. Rectification of the will. I need to have the desire to change. I have to have the desire and the will to leave my sinful life behind.
Mm.
That's the only way this grace becomes efficacious. And so we have to understand that's very important. So you ask a good question. It seems too good to be true. It is if you don't realize that this is all just going back to the sacraments, begging God for his mercy, and then having a purpose of amendment to change your life. I mean,
Mm.
that's really what the whole Bible is about. This is nothing more than emphasizing what the Bible teaches us. Any broken person can get up, crawl out of the gutter, go to confession, receive Holy Communion, and receive an incredible grace that we call extraordinary. So it really does not go against anything that the church has taught.
Mm. But so as a practice, so it fits within the church's teachings, and there is a grace that's given. But as a practice, there is an element of it that um, is requiring something of us. We have to go through a process. It's almost as though we're training ourselves, because like you mentioned that thing with Saint Philip Neri. Is the analogy that comes to mind is if your hands are full with your own things, you can't receive what God is giving you. And so, would you say that the Finch protocol is giving you that is teaching us how to let go of those things that we're holding on to, and so therefore it's a kind of a training camp or program in order to. So it's not just saying, "Oh, go to the sacraments and receive." It's saying this is how to receive the sacraments. Is that
It
kind of
is
thing?
surrendering of our will. And I'd like to point out the novena. Usually novenas are our will. Like if I lose something, I want to find it. So I pray a novena to St. Anthony. If I have cancer, I want to be healed. So I pray a novena to St. Peregrine. But the Divine Mercy Novena is the only novena we have in the Catholic Church that's not our intentions, but God's intentions. He tells us what to pray for. Bring me the souls of priests and religious, bring me the souls of lukewarm sinners, bring me the souls of schismatic and heretics. So he's basically, in a way, when we follow that, we are surrendering our will. And that is humility so that God can fill us with what he wants to fill us with. So even on that litmus test, it passes.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose going through the novena, if you've not done it before, you'll see how it is a surrendering. But like from the outset, you need to go into it with that mentality of, oh, this is going to be a this is not about me. The purpose, what's the purpose of you going through this? It's to get closer to God, to get yourself into a right position so that you can receive the grace that it's just waiting for you. He died on the cross for us. It's put.
Hi, sorry about that. We got cut off. Okay, hopefully you can splice them together.
I'll make something work. If not, we'll have some good clips. Grand, brilliant. Okay, so with that, we were just talking about how it's the Finch protocol helps us to let go of our predispositions in order to engage in a spiritual reality, which we see in the sacraments and in this whole message of divine mercy, which isn't just the Finch protocol, it is the beating heart of Jesus, the sacred heart of Jesus, you might say, pouring out for us. So yeah, so there is that element where, I mean, the Protestants might say, "Oh, so it's works and faith and all that." How would you come back with that?
No, see, the one thing that is a sad misunderstanding of the Catholic teaching is that we think that works are going to buy our way into heaven. No, no, no. But inspiring to this is that the Catholics and Protestants both realize there is only one thing that gets us to heaven: grace. Grace is the only thing that gets us to heaven. But the Protestants stop there, and they think the Catholics go too far. That we say you got to work your way into heaven with the cat. That's not Catholic Church teaching. Catholic Church teaching is that we only make it to heaven through grace, but we have to cooperate with that grace. We absolutely have to cooperate with that grace. And the difference is Catholics believe that grace is transformative, that I actually become a transformed soul, metaphysically, a being, a metaphysical being. I become transformed in grace. To the Protestants, Martin Luther is you're still a dung, you're still a pile of dung, but now God sprinkles snow over it. So you look pretty, but you are still a pile of dung. And that's their justification, sprinkling snow over it. No, sanctification is to be made holy so that we are justified by God allowing us to share in His divine life.
Hmm.
And so, what we have to understand is Catholics are just saying here that this is a day of grace. This is a day that God's grace pours upon us. Capture that grace. Trust, because trust is the vessel by which all grace is received. So again, we're not looking at this as something we have to do. No, this is extra credit of grace. This is not a work. This is a just a cooperation with God's grace. I mean, what about love? Well, if
Mm.
love isn't put into action, then it's not efficacious. And what do you do when you put it into action? That's a good work. Not meaning that that work saves you, but what it means is you're now cooperating with God's grace to love your neighbor. You know,
Mm.
when you have love, that is what mercy is. Love put into action. And so on this day, God purifies us, cleanses us of not only sin but all temporal punishment, so that we can be spotless, so that we can trust Him, respond to that grace, and to join Him in His divine life. It's so scriptural, it's so in line with Catholic Church teaching that anything less is a misunderstanding.
Mm. It's kind of like an analogy that's often used, or that helps me to understand things like this, is often like fitness. You know, we have a physical training, and it brings us to a kind of a higher level physically. You're able to lift heavier things. You're able to run further. You're able to be healthier. But like going deeper than that, there's also the fact that like, you know, our bodies have everything that we need inside them, but we do need to do certain things in order to trigger them. So, for
You
example,
have to
like, you know,
eat. You
well,
have to
yeah,
eat.
you have to eat, but you have to eat well, and you have to.
Yeah.
It means you have to actually work on what's the best things to eat. You have to sleep well, which, as we were saying at the top of
Yep.
the show, is not always the case. But that kind of adds into a different thing as well. Of like, there is a supernatural grace as well, but without doing the work, it's like you also can't say I'm not going to sleep because God's going to protect me. It's a case of
Yep.
God's going to put me to work, and if I get to sleep, I get to sleep. But God will give you the rest you need. But
Yes.
in a case of like your everyday run of the mill, you know, just going to work, looking after the family, you'll get the grace you need if you can't get to sleep. But you do need
Yeah.
to work at your life to make sure that you're healthy
Yeah.
physically, eating
There's
well,
three
sleeping well.
there's three things that the doctors will tell you, and that's sleep, nutrition, and exercise. In order to be a healthy human, both bodily and spiritually, health is related to spirituality. But on the physical side, of course, on the spiritual side, we need prayer, we need grace. But on the physical side, again, we need nutrition, sleep, and exercise. If we don't have those three things, then we're going to be lacking. So even the Protestants would have to acknowledge you got to do something
Mm.
to be able to help yourself. You just can't lay on the couch, do nothing, and expect you're going to be healthy. You need to eat right, you need to sleep right, and you need to exercise. And
Mm.
so I think that's a good analogy because it shows that you have to help yourself as well. Not just, God isn't gonna do everything. No, he expects you to do your own part in some sense.
Yeah, it's a collaboration. And that's the thing that's always like just mind blowing is God, you know, didn't have to do everything he did, but he deemed that's the best way of doing it, which was entering into relationship with us. Like if he wanted to create a world, he's created the world. Just click his fingers, you know, sing a song, whatever he wants to do. But he decided to work with humanity and say, you know what, I'm gonna create these beings, you know, this like spirit, you know, composite of human material and spiritual material, and I'm gonna say, with you guys, I'm gonna make this happen, but I don't need you guys, but I want to, and I think that's the crazy thing
And what
about
was it?
faith.
St. Augustine, God created you without you, but he will not save you without you. You have to cooperate with the grace he gives. So he created you without you, but he will not save you without you. You got to cooperate with that grace.
Yeah, and I think, and also he'll take us further than we could ever imagine as well. I think we always limit ourselves of like what's logical to us, or like, oh, it makes sense that I need to sleep 8 hours, so I'm going to make sure I sleep 8 hours. But God has other things in mind, and so without going down this like health and natural body kind of alleyway too far, I wanted to talk about like more of the supernatural. And because with these devotions and entering into it's like a pathway to enter deeper into relationship. Even though, as we've said, the Divine Mercy isn't a devotion in the same way that, a devotion to the holy toenail of Saint Therese or something. Even that devotion to the toenail is a pathway to a deeper relationship with Christ, in the sense that it transforms us by us engaging our will in something that is beyond us, I feel. Um, and so it brings me back to thinking about like spiritual warfare. When we think of spiritual warfare, we think of stories of Padre Pio where he's wrestling with a demon and his guardian angel's watching him and he can see this whole thing going on. But what I've come to realize is maybe spiritual warfare is just getting one of those plastic glow in the dark rosaries and running through a few prayers. And can you help me elaborate on that or go deeper? And it's like, what is spiritual warfare? Is it dramatic, or is it silent, or is
Yeah.
it?
A great, great place to go is paragraph 1760 in the Diary of St. Faustina, because Jesus says, Ina, and he said to great spiritual warfare. And he walks through with her everything that we can read and learn for ourselves about not gossiping and you know things that open portals to evil. And so I would strongly recommend Diary of St. Faustina. It's called Divine Mercy in My Soul, paragraph 1760. It's a long paragraph, but Jesus gives basically 25 things that I narrowed it down to 25 simple things that we can do to win. He says, fight like a knight because know that you're not alone. And that's always inspired me. He says you're in a big, stadium and all of heaven is watching you. But you're not alone. You're not alone. And so, yeah, the spiritual warfare, you think of the levels of the extraordinary activities of the demonic infestation, oppression, obsession, possession. Very few people are possessed, if you will, but many of us are oppressed or facing obsession. Oppression is more external influences of evil, like on our relationships, on our physical health, our jobs. But obsession is where the evil demonic start to get into the interior. Take your
Mm,
life. You're not worth anything. End your life. Nobody cares about you. The world will be better with you gone. And so the key to spiritual warfare is overcoming these lies. Remember, Satan is the master of deceit. And so Jesus gives a great summation on how to engage in spiritual warfare. It's quite fascinating.
mm. So, like, it might not be something as dark as end your life. It might even be, oh, this is where you're going to find pleasure. This is where you're going to find rest, and it's something that's just not necessarily bad, but just something that's not
Right,
where you're actually going to find rest. And I think that's
right,
something that is always mistaken about like temptation by the devil. It's not, oh, do this good thing because the church doesn't want you to do it. It's do this thing that's going to make you miserable eventually. It's gonna take you away from the goodness that you're seeking. Um,
yeah.
and so,
And remember, the devil has access to our intellect, but not our will. So he can put all kinds of things in my mind, past girlfriends or senses, stimulation in the senses. He can get into our intellect, but he can't touch your will. And that's the gift that God gave us in free will. And so you've got to pray your guardian angel to help you in these decisions in your act of the will, so that we keep ourselves safe,
mm,
and that we persevere through these trials.
yeah. So devotion isn't like a set of practices. It is a perspective on the world, and a set of practices come with that in order to help you engage deeper in that. And the same way, spiritual warfare isn't pray this prayer, do this rosary, but also praying those prayer and doing those rosaries. The thing that they're doing is they're putting your mind in the right place. They're keeping your focus in the right area. So when you're this
Yes.
real spiritual warfare is keeping the right mindset. Is that what you would say?
Yes, because it actually God will bring a greater good out of even the worst evils, right? And so even in trial and temptation, what do? We grow stronger. It's kind of like weightlifting. When you lift weights, you're not growing muscle during weightlifting. What's happening is you're tearing down the muscle. And then later when you sleep, it grows back stronger. There's no question that his creatures get stronger through trial and temptation. And so this spiritual warfare of trial and temptation can actually be, like you said, not just a set of say this prayer at this time and put holy water in this part of your house at this time. It actually becomes a mindset on how to persevere through these trials and temptations so that your mind can help you to avoid the near occasion of sin, so that your will can follow the intellect. The intellect precedes the will, and the will can say, hey, there's danger here. So my will, or I'm sorry, the intellect says, hey, there's danger here, so that my will be kicked into gear to fight or flight. It's all related to psychology. It's all related to the human person. You said it earlier about the composite. The human person is a body soul composite. And so we seem to forget that in the soul, that's where the devil will attack, because we only think of him usually the physical attacks, the temptations of the flesh, the world, the devil. But I mean, he wants to bring down your spirituality, causing you not to pray, all these other things. And we have to realize that this is an opportunity for us to grow in strength. I've always baffled, or not baffled, but overwhelmed when you think how much your soul must be worth if Satan never ceases to pursue it and the king of the universe died for it, which even if you were the only person who ever lived, God would have died for your soul. So, how valuable must your soul be if Satan never ceases to pursue it and the king of the universe died for it? That's powerful.
Yeah, that's insane. I was going to ask you to give us one thing to sign off on because we're coming to the end now, but I can't think of anything better to say than that as a way of how do we tackle devotion. Bear that in mind and get your head in gear and let the practices feed the
Yeah.
mental strength. Just before you
And
head
and if
off,
I could add to that, if I
please
could add
do.
to that, we as Marians teach divine mercy as both a message and a devotion. And the message is not optional. That's the heart of the gospel. We talked about it earlier. ABC, the ABCs. Ask for God's mercy, be merciful to each other, completely trust in God's mercy. Those are the three foundational, non-optional um, structure of the whole Bible. I mean, if again, to get to heaven, you got to ask for God's mercy and forgiveness. You have to be merciful to each other, and you have to completely trust in Him. But then why mess with this devotion if devotions are technically optional? Because a devotion helps you live the stronger message of divine mercy. It's kind of like an athlete. How he is judged is in the game. And how we will be judged at the end is on the ABCs. Did we ask for God's mercy and forgiveness? Did we love? Were we merciful to each other? And did we trust him? That's how we will be judged. So why mess with Finch? Why mess with the feast, the image, the novena, the chaplet, and the hour of mercy? Because those five channels of grace help you live a deeper message of divine mercy, which is not optional. The devotion of divine mercy is optional, but I'll tell you what, think of an athlete. He's only judged by how he did in the game. Nobody talks about how he did in practice. But does
Mm.
any athlete come into the game without having practiced? No, he's only going to excel at the game if he has mastered practice. And it's the same thing in our faith. If you want to get to heaven, you got to master your performance of the ABCs. And if you want to do that, you practice the devotion. That's how God interlinked them. And I think that's a lot of what you're saying here.
So beautiful, and it's actually linking with a few other episodes I've done earlier in the year. So everyone who's listening, go back and watch my episodes until we get to have another one of these conversations, because I think we need to. Because you really want to talk about your story of how you became a priest. I want to go deeper
Sure.
into this divine mercy and evangelism. Where can we listen to you to get more information from your great mind?
Yes, please check out. We have a YouTube channel called Divine Mercy. We've got over 500,000 subscribers. So if you're on YouTube and you want to watch some of these videos, we're on every day with new content. I do a Saturday talk every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock a.m. It's called Explaining the Faith. It's become super popular. Several of the videos have over 1 million views. And we invite you to join us on the YouTube channel. If you want to stay away from YouTube, you can go visit our direct platform, divinemercyplus.org. And that's where you can, commercial free, you can watch our content. And if you want written content, not video, please join us at thedivinemercy.org. And that's where you can learn a whole bunch more about Divine Mercy.
That's beautiful. I'll put all those links in the show notes. And if you are listening and you're in Aotearoa, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 27th, he's going to be in New Zealand. So go check that out. Turn up these events. We want them to be massive because we want to spread this beautiful message to the world, and it starts with you. So get there. Let's work out how to practice, how to be merciful, and connect deeper with God. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much.